1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome back to The Right Hype. If you are new here, my name is Gavon, and I created this platform not so that we could chase trends, but so we can interpret risk and opportunity through culture. Today, I want to talk about something brand builders are quietly struggling with right now: the cost of being wrong. I know. In today's landscape, the cost of being wrong often exceeds the cost of being late. There are a lot of brands that want to be first, or they feel like they're falling behind. And so their reaction is to speed things up, throw more money at things. Let's be bigger, let's be louder. Most of these brands are just optimizing for speed, for noise, for hype, when really they should be optimizing for belief, for understanding, and for clarity. Last week, I introduced a term that I'm using to describe the era that we are in. I'm calling it the post-hype economy. It's when attention is cheap, virality is abundant, but trust and belief is scarce. And this week, I want to focus on one of the dynamics really shaping this environment. I call it the trust gap. The trust gap is the distance between visibility and belief, and it shows up when campaigns travel faster than credibility. It happens when brands mistake reach for resonance, when presence is confused for trust. Words like resonance, trust, credibility, these ideas are really hard to measure, and therefore it's hard to monitor over time. Before we entered a post-hype economy, the hype economy rewarded a lot of these behaviors that are now coming off, a bit cringe, and things that used to feel novel are starting to feel a bit stale. And when a brand isn't able to recalibrate for the times that people are experiencing, that gap between visibility and belief starts to widen. So here's the cultural signal that I am picking up. Speed once protected relevance in the hype economy. Now it exposes judgment. See, in the hype economy, consumers weren't up to speed on marketing tactics and lingo. They sort of lived in the hype like it was this new, exciting cultural space. Everything felt fast, instant gratification. But over time, those quick hits started to feel duller and duller, and they dwindled faster and faster. And brands that optimize for speed are really just trying to, earn the trust of their consumers. They want to be desired. They want people to want them. In the world of marketing, I see this all the time. I come across briefs that say, we want to move at the speed of culture, and, we want to hack the cultural conversation. So people are talking about them again. But what that usually reveals isn't ambition, it's anxiety, it's insecurity, it's sales. Leaders are watching their competitors win attention and capture headlines and turn cultural moments into quarterly results. So the instinct is quite simple. Let's replicate what's happening. But, then you get a lot of the same things, right? You do things based off precedents and not future forward thinking, things that are breaking formulas, things that introduce genuine newness and novelty to the market. But when leaders move quickly without cultural fluency, understanding the context, the risks that they're trying to avoid become unavoidable. You get collaborations that feel hollow, messaging that misses tone, participation that reads as opportunistic instead of additive. Speed used to signal a sort of confidence that a brand, knew what they were doing, but, now it's actually becoming more of a sign of exposure and exposing judgment. And the wrong judgment can be very detrimental. The cost of being wrong is starting to increase. So here's the insight that matters the most. Slow judgment is not risk. Misaligned judgment is. Being first no longer guarantees that people are going to believe you. People don't trust you because you're quick, although that can be fun to be that brand that jumps on the moment. What really signals cultural fluency and understanding is when you show up before that idea or that trend is cool. It's also important to show up and not sell anything. I think a lot of brands ride the wave by launching a product. That's really where the trust gap becomes visible. I want to talk about two brands in particular. So one of the brands is e.l.f. e.l.f. is a brand that really has an expressive, a very light-hearted, optimistic, a lot of bright colors. There is a desire to, embed themselves in culture in a way that feels accessible, that like every person can sort of be a part of. And then the second brand that I want to talk about is Urban Decay. And Urban Decay is edgier, more disruptive, isn't so much about being loud as much as they are about being fluent and doing things a little bit more unconventional. e.l.f. has an entire department dedicated to these cinematic like storytelling, and they've made a music video. They're doing some pretty cool stuff at e.l.f. But in effort to stay culturally relevant, the brand partnered with some viral internet figures, Matt Rife and Heidi in Closet, which is a drag queen from RuPaul's Drag Race. Matt Rife is a comedian, and the intention was to grab attention, right? The campaign wasn't done by poor execution or bad intentions. It failed because it misread cultural context. The humor, power dynamics, and the audience expectations did not align with the brand's equity or values. Matt Rife, in his material, tends to make some pretty offensive comments towards certain communities, and those communities just so happen to be e.l.f.'s audience. Instead of maybe taking a different approach that wasn't as optimized for attention, they went for that attention. They wanted to move at the speed of culture. They wanted that visibility and that reach, but it ended up falling short in resonance, therefore taking a hit towards e.l.f.'s trust that it's built all this entire time. And that era didn't just disappear within the next campaign cycle. It accumulates, it resurfaces, and over time, it quietly erodes trust across the platform, audiences, and partnerships. It's not speed that creates that long-term advantage. It's understanding. It's judgment that isn't aligned with your audience. That is a trust gap in action. That is why Urban Decay fell on my radar. They did a partnership with an OnlyFans creator, and it worked. The campaign was all about the end to a clean girl era, which, as we know, was marked by very minimal makeup. It was championed by the Glossiers of the world, as well as all the clean beauty brands. But now the pendulum swings back towards artistry and craft, and not just clean looks, but looks that feel unique, that feel distinct to your style and your personality, things that may feel a little more quirky and a little bit more out there. But it also shows that that dedication to the craft of makeup. This collaboration wasn't about chasing a trend. For Urban Decay, it was actually about entering a cultural space that it had long been adjacent to. Now, this campaign definitely had some shock value, and every campaign should have that factor that really grabs people's attention. But when there was conversation around it, what it did is actually it reinforced its values. It reinforced inclusivity in a way that e.l.f. wasn't able to really hit on. So the cost of getting it wrong is starting to increase. People remember these things and they live on the internet perpetually. Speed doesn't close that gap, it actually amplifies it. And once that trust is compromised, everything downstream can get a bit more expensive. I remember when PR machines dictated the narratives in culture, but now that every creator has a cell phone, it's more democratized. As long as you have a phone and an opinion, you can start to sway people's perceptions around a brand, and reactions travel faster than corrections. All right, so I'll leave you with this. The real question isn't about speed. It's about judgment. Before you set your next deadline for your next campaign, ask yourself, what are you truly optimizing for? Attention or trust? That's the work to be done. I'll see you next time.